Okay, so with that, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 present at the moment, which means we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much, Chase. I'm going to do a statement. It explains the Animal Care Advisory Board for those that are watching this remotely. The Animal Care Services Advisory Board is an advisory board that is appointed by City Council. I am Rita Brodigan, Chair, and the Vice Chair is Susan Belden. It is the function of the board to assist and advise the City of San Antonio regarding animal care services through recommendations, reports, and by representing ACS in the community with our assigned council districts. Members of the public can watch this meeting through WebEx or listen to the meeting through audio only by calling 415-655-0001. I'll repeat that. It's 415-655-0001 and using the access code 133-235-0707. Again, 133-235-0707. This meeting is being recorded. Because this is just our second WebEx meeting, at this time, I'm going to ask ACS staff to provide additional instructions for tonight's meeting.
All right, thank you, Rita. I did want to take a second to just acknowledge that Sally, we see you. You joined the meeting successfully. So we'll leave you on mute for now, but good to see you, Sally. So on to the meeting. On the call today are our board members, as noted by the roll call. And also we have ACS staff here tonight, including Chief Operations Officer Cynthia Martinez and myself. I'm Chase Fossey, and I'm in the department's assistant to the director and today's meeting liaison. I'll start by providing an overview of today's meeting format. To ensure that today's meeting runs smoothly and effectively, board members, we ask that you all keep yourselves muted unless you are speaking. If a board member would like to speak, we ask that they unmute themselves, state their name, then briefly pause before proceeding. This will make sure we know who is speaking at all times, and also that we are not speaking over one another. Like most video conference platforms, WebEx does have a chat feature. However, we ask that board members refrain from using the chat tool and keep all comments on the spoken record. For each item, staff will start by making a presentation. After the presentation, board members can discuss the item and ask any follow-up questions of staff. After discussion is closed, we will open the floor to motions. We ask that any board member who is making a motion first do so by stating their name, pausing, and then proceeding with the motion. All voting will be done by roll call. When I call your name, please unmute your microphone, indicate your vote, and then re-mute yourself. We will do this slowly each time so that it's clear. Finally, members of the public were invited to submit public comments before tonight's meeting and before tonight's meeting began to have them read aloud by staff. Comments were due at 4:00 p.m. with instructions being posted on the agenda for tonight's meeting. We did receive one comment, which I will read later during the public comment portion of the meeting. And with that, we are ready to view the agenda. Give me just 1 minute here. All right, the first three items for today's meeting are on the consent agenda. Do any board members have any questions about any consent agenda item or wish to pull any of these items for individual consideration? Please remember to state your name first if you unmute yourself. right, I am not hearing any feedback or any requests for comment.
Okay, thank you, Chase. We are now ready to entertain a motion for the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
This is Mike Shannon. Motion to approve consent agenda.
Thank you, Michael. Do I have a second?
This is Valerie.
I'll second
A
it.
second.
And Val Mars, the second. Thank you. Having heard a motion to approve the consent agenda, which has been seconded, can we please now have a roll call vote?
Just making sure I get my notes here. So Michael made the motion, Val seconded.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we'll take the vote. Michael Shannon,
Yes.
Cynthia Cox,
Aye.
Martha Banda, George Garcia, Rita Brodigan,
Aye.
Karen Spear,
Yes.
Kathy Davis, Val Moore,
Aye.
Katie Jarl,
Aye.
Susan Belden,
Aye.
and finally Sally Scott.
Aye.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the ayes have it, 8-0.
Okay, thank you, Chase. The next item on the agenda is item number 4. I'm going to turn that over to Heber. He's going to be giving us on the ACS 2021 proposed budget. Heber?
Thanks, Rita. Let me hurry and pull it up and share my screen.
Sorry, Heber, I've got to get out of my sharing, but I'm having a problem. All right, I'm going to make you the presenter. And you should be able to share your screen.
All right. I'm assuming everybody can see the presentation. So I want to take a few minutes and just kind of walk everybody through the budget. Earlier in the month, the city manager presented to the city council the proposed budget. As a reminder, this is not the final, this is the proposed. The final budget will be presented to the city council towards the first part of next month. I'll talk more about that shortly. But this goes into a little bit of detail with this budget. I thought with this year being a unique year, it was important for me to kind of highlight some of the things that are happening citywide so that I can build a little context into the ACS's budget. And so I'm taking a few minutes and just kind of walking through. There has been a financial impact associated with the COVID-19 on the city revenue, as shown in this slide, and was presented to city council that we are expecting next year to see a reduction or an impact of $127 million on the city. Of that 127 million, 24 million reduction is associated with the general fund, where the remaining $103 million is associated with the restricted funds. Animal care services is currently funded from is part of the general fund. And so we do play a role into that $24 million gap for next year. The majority of that decrease is associated with the sales tax decrease. This was a slide that was presented to illustrate the change that COVID, at least the months during COVID, had, and the anticipated effect that COVID is likely to have on sales tax in the community. You'll notice that when we adopted the 2020 budget, there was the expectation that we would see a $3.1 million, a 3% increase in the sales tax revenue, whereas now we are expecting next year to see a negative 5% or 5%, nearly a 6% decrease in the amount of sales tax that will be generated within the department. This slide represents the city's budget for next year. You'll notice that the city has a $2.9 billion budget. It's broken down into three categories. You have the general fund, which supports the basic services which includes animal care services. You have restricted funds, or restricted funds where we are seeing the majority of the impact associated with COVID. Restricted funds are those funds that are not funded in the normal traditional way or through taxpayers. So that you have your airport fund, which was significantly hit, the development services, our hotel occupancy tax, which was significantly hit, and then solid waste and so forth and so on. And then we do have a $641 million within the city's capital budget. These are funds that are associated with the 2017 bond program, and the strategy of what we anticipate on spending next year through the 2017 bond program. When you dive down into just the general fund, this pie gives you an insight of the ins and outs of the finance. You'll notice the outside ring. The outside ring refers to where the money that the city is receiving, where the revenue's coming from. So you'll notice that when it comes to CPS, we receive 27% of that $1.2 billion is coming from CPS payments that we receive. 31% of our general fund budget is originating from property tax, whereas $295 million is come from sales tax, and then 20% or 239 is from other resources. As I showed earlier, the impact to the general fund is primarily associated with the sales tax, as well as the other resources. Now, how that money is then distributed, that is what is represented on the inside of that graph, which you will see that the public safety takes a large part of that, up to 64.5%, and then it's broken down into the various departments, and you'll see that animal care services right there with the $16.1 million budget. Looking big picture on the city, the 2021 proposed budget for the city of San Antonio is $7.7 million lower than this year's budget. So as a whole, the city has been required to take cuts. In FY21, so next year and the year after that, within the general fund, we are expecting the city is in need of identifying over $87 million of expenditure cuts over the next 2 years. Now, despite that $87 million reduction that is required over the next 2 years, what I can identify to each and every one of you that the proposed reductions do not directly impact the ACS programs in fiscal year 2021. Once again, in my opinion, the city has done a fabulous job to demonstrate that animal care services continues to be a priority, despite there being a one-of-a-kind economic crisis going on simultaneously. This graph kind of gives you and provides for you a summary of how the reductions, as I mentioned, that over the next 2 years, There are $87 million of reductions that needed to be identified. This breaks it down in the reductions in 2021 for next year and the year after. I will also indicate that the city has did a fabulous job in preparing for this, and the city managers and the city manager's office did a great job for the city, in my opinion, by preparing early through some of the decisions that were made in fiscal year 2020 or in this year that is saving us and helping us along the way. And those proactive decisions, in my opinion, made it possible so that Animal Care Services is able to continue its services with minimal impact next year. The impact that we will see is we do participate with all the other departments in the no pay increases, the hiring freeze, and the hiring freeze that is going on. So I want to take a moment and just look at the fiscal year 2021 budget for Animal Care Services. In all my presentations, I want to start with just reminding everybody what the focus is and what the mission of Animal Care Services. It is to encourage responsible pet ownership by promoting and protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the residents and pets of San Antonio through education, enforcement, and community partnership. In order to accomplish this, I have maintained and prepared to maintain the same structure, organizational structure, because it fits with that mission, where the department is broken out into our field division, shelter division, live release division, clinic, and our education outreach division. In 2011, as many of you know, we implemented our strategic plan. In 2015, that strategic plan increased by adding a fourth priority of engage and educate the community. In 2021, we will continue with that same focus of that balanced approach between increasing our live release rate while at the same time working on controlling the stray animal population, as well as enforcing the laws that are out there. In 2021, our budget remains the same as what it was in 2020. It remains unchanged. With the exception, and I'll explain in more detail, we will see an increase of 11 positions within our department. This graph demonstrates how that budget is broken up into the various divisions within the department. So when we take a look at what changes from the 2020 budget to the 2021 budget is, first, over the course of the last 10 years, we have increased. In order for us to maintain the level of service that we provided, we have slowly increased the number of temporary positions that that operate on our campus. This budget takes those temporary positions and converts them into actual city positions. It is a cost neutral initiative. The difference is we are able to take those employees or those temporary employees who've worked very hard for us for the last couple of years and actually bring them on board so that they can receive the benefits that should be theirs that are associated with the city. The second change is that we are working with solid waste. We proactively understood, as a department, we understood the need for the city to be able to find innovative ways to save money. We had about $60,000 in our budget that we were using to market in our marketing campaign, with the intent to improve and with the intent to keep pets on their property and to keep pets in their home. The idea came to us and we reached out to Solid Waste and they were in full agreement. Solid Waste is a separate fund that was not impacted with COVID. And they are the organization that focuses on, that is responsible for picking up the dead animals that are found on the streets. So what this initiative is doing is we were able to provide savings in the general fund of about $60,000 while simultaneously working with solid waste on a marketing campaign that would focus on reducing the dead animals that are found on the streets. And so while our operating budget was reduced by $60,000, a solid waste budget absorbed that, and that those expenses will be charged out of the solid waste budget. It's a mutually beneficial initiative that allowed us to be able to save some money, but also allowed us, this partnership will allow solid waste and animal care services to work closer together in identifying, in reducing the number of dead animals being picked up on the side of the street. The second change is we did receive some additional fundings. As we gave up the $60,000, we were able to redirect and be provided funding in order for us to right size the budgets for our fleet maintenance. Over the course of the last few years, the cost of maintaining our fleet has increased as our services have increased. And so this budget right sizes those components. It also provides the additional funding that we needed in order for us to continue with the enhanced cleaning protocols that we established in response to COVID-19, as well as for animal care services prior to that, the concerns that was associated with seeing more pets coming into our facility with distemper. And so those enhanced, the costs associated with those cleaning protocols are included in this year's budget. In regards to the metrics, this slide demonstrates the change in the metrics of what we did last year, what was our target for this year, as well as what we estimate by the end of this year, and then what we currently anticipate on achieving by the end of next year. You will notice that in the 9 years that I have been here, this is the first time that we have seen a decrease in a lot of our metrics. Those decreases are entirely connected to the effects of COVID. We have seen a decrease in the calls for service volume compared to last year. You'll notice that last year we had 118,000 service requests that came into our facility, whereas we are seeing a drastic decrease in the last couple of months, where we are now estimating 100,000 calls for service. Now, receiving the reduction in calls for service naturally means that there are fewer pets that are being impounded, from 32,000 last year to what we are expecting this year is 28,000. With fewer pets being impounded at our facility, all that naturally trickles down to those pets, the number of pets being returned to owners, the number of pets being rescued, the number of pets being adopted. What I am proud to say is that throughout it all, despite the closures within the city, our staff was able to work very hard to promote placement, and we are able to maintain we expect to maintain an annual 91% live release rate by the end of this year. Surgeries, as you can see, have gone down due to our agency temporarily shutting surgeries, as well as some of our partners temporarily shutting surgeries. As will be shared by Chase, we are returning to the number of surgeries that we are being performed. And then same thing with microchips. At this particular time, we are not holding microchip clinics as we historically have. And we hope that within the next couple of months that we'll be able to regain that as well. Next steps in part of the budget. This is a slide. This slide demonstrates the various steps that are associated with the budget timeline. From the yellow represents what has already been accomplished up to August 6th, when the city manager presented his proposed budget. We are in the middle of the SA Speak Up budget survey that is still available for individuals who want to participate. We are also holding budget presentations and public hearings. For example, there's one that starts shortly today in District 3, and there will be more that are available for the community to listen and participate in. They're all being done, they're all being accomplished online. September 17, the city manager will take the insight that has received and will present the budget for adoptions along with any recommended change. Historically, each department will have an opportunity to present their budget to the city council. That is, on one hand, that is not the case with ACS this year. They have not directly asked us to come in and to present our budget. However, they have asked us to provide for city council a presentation that highlights our COVID response and what we accomplished. That is scheduled to be provided on August 31st, and that will be available online if you are interested in tuning in to listen. With that being said, that concludes my presentation, and I open it up to any questions that anybody may have.
Heber and Rita, this is Chase. If I could, I'd just like to recognize that we have had a few other individuals join the meeting since Heber began his presentation. We do have Monica Hernandez with us from the city attorney's office, who's filling in for Alma Lozano this evening. We also have George Garcia. George was able to make it and is with us. Welcome, George. And then finally, we also have Dr. Marilyn Gottbetter from ACS, who's able to join on to the meeting as well. So welcome, everyone. Rita, the floor is yours. Rita, you're muted.
At this time, if there are any members that have any questions for Heber, I guess wave to it. I have not got all of everybody's faces around there. Chase, do you that you can see people that want to raise their hand if they have a question for Heber?
I do. I see a couple. So would you like me to call them out?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think Sally's shot up first. So Sally, unmute yourself, and what do you have?
Okay, well, I think that Heber has done a fantastic job. I just can't imagine how hard it must have been, but you have done a great job. That's all I have to say.
Well, Sally, I appreciate that, and we do appreciate that. I will pass that. I will take a bit of that, and I will pass the majority of it to my staff.
Thank you.
All right, if I'm not mistaken, Karen, I think I saw your hand go up next.
Heber, I have a question on the spay neuter surgeries that have dropped. I know we used to have the community cat spay neuter days. Are we eventually going to bring those back? Because I'm hearing a lot of concern with the number of cats that are breeding around the neighborhoods.
Yeah, the 2021 budget does not create any cuts. So there is no budgetary reason for me to stop that program. So yes, it is my intent to bring it back fully to what it was. Now that is going to be a staggered approach in order for us to be able to keep things safe at least the surgeries being performed at ACS, because I need to be able to make sure that my staff remains safe as well as that we have the staffing necessary. We do anticipate on bringing it back. I will tell you that we are starting between us and everybody who's listening, we are starting a small portion of that. I believe it is either next week. Is that right, Cynthia? Or Cynthia Martinez? So we're looking at being able to get a portion of that back next week. because we are able to put that in without any change. But it'll be a little bit of time before we can ramp up to the rate that we were doing before COVID.
Thanks, Heber. You're doing a great job. I agree with Sally.
And once again, I'll take a portion of that and push the majority of it to my staff.
All right, I'm going to look for the next hand, but in the meantime, also just saw that Martha joined, Martha Banda. So Martha, welcome. All right, George, did I see your hand? All right, George, unmute yourself. There should be a button.
Hey,
Okay, there you go.
do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Heber, do we have any partnership with the Feral Cat Coalition?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay, because I saw their truck that one day that I was out. Now I was wondering if we had anything to do with them. If they give us a hand.
Yeah, so we do not have any financial partnership with them. They do not provide us funds and we do not provide them direct funds. However, their program is very much aligned with our program, and so we compare notes on a regular basis and we kind of help each other out along the way.
Oh, okay.
So for example, historically, we've allowed them to utilize our facility for them to come here to do their training for their trappers.
Oh, okay. Good. Good. And another thing, I was at that meeting that they had on the budget. It was virtual also, and according to them, they talked about ACS, and their remark was that the monies for ACS was not going to change. It was going to stay the way it is.
Correct. That is correct. So the impact that my department will have associated on a financial aspect of it, the programs remain the same. The impact that we are going to have is more associated with the citywide impact of the hiring freeze, as well as the reduction of no pay raises for staff. And so that is where we will see the impact on our side. But as for programmatic, all the programs that were funded in last year will continue to be funded next year.
And I know that it's a difficult situation for everyone with this COVID. The only thing we can do is what you're doing. You're trying to do the best you can, and that's all that can be expected of us. So keep up the good work, and let's hope that we get out of this COVID, and the people that are sick get well, and the ones that have passed away, that we pray for their families.
Thank you, George.
All right, I see a hand for Val.
Yeah, sorry, Heber, I have to unmute.
Val,
The question is-
I always love to hear from you.
Oh, you're too sweet. The question is on those slides, I might be wrong. It showed almost a 9,000 decrease from 19 to 21 on spay neuters. Is
Yeah.
that 21 assuming COVID is still there? Is that why the numbers are so decreased?
So in 2021, that's a good question. So the funding is fully there. So we will have the funds to do more. The decrease was in conservatively operationally, if we continue to have problems that we cannot avoid. Now, granted, these figures were identified and were placed into part of the budget process about a month ago. And things have changed, and hopefully, so I am optimistic that we will be able to do even better. But I'm being conservative, given the fact that the COVID, we really don't know what's going on.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And the adoption numbers are also very impressive considering all the restrictions with COVID. So good job for your team and for you.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I will say that I do want to give a special shout out to Bethany and her live release team for how they've completely revamped and redid the adoption. Chase will speak more about that, but what Bethany did with her team to kind of get us into a position to where we can be safe while simultaneously adopt out pets was just incredible, especially the quick turnaround time that she did that in.
All right, thank you.
But
All right, Karen, I see your hand again.
Heber, what I was going to ask you, are more people taking advantage of the diversion program now with this COVID? Are more people keeping found pets with them and letting animal care market them since COVID has started?
I will tell you, and again, Chase will probably talk a little bit more about this in greater detail, but I will tell you that COVID presented for us an opportunity for us to reevaluate our priorities and to really take a look at and saying what services should we be providing and what services should we not be providing. I want to make it perfectly clear that during the COVID, we have been able to provide the services that have been needed to nearly everybody, but maybe in a different way. And so at no point in time, while we were prepared to not respond to certain service requests or not pick up certain animals, we never had to do that. We've been able to respond to the service requests as they've come in. If there's been a need for us to impound a dog, we've impounded it. However, we did reevaluate how we do our front intake to where we say, what is the best route? And so Chase will talk in more detail about that in his presentation, but we are recommending and we are proceeding with a more controlled intake process that is better aligned with what it is that we are doing and with the idea that animal care services should be the last option, not the first option for owners.
All right, I am not seeing any more waving hands. One last opportunity.
And Karen, I recognize that on your question, I may not have fully answered it. If Chase does not, if his presentation does not give that even more detail, then we can jump in after his presentation.
No pressure, Heber. David, I'm seeing your hand go up.
Yeah, thank you, Chase. Hey, I just wanted to share with this distinguished advisory group how impressed I've been with the leadership at ACS. I'm not just saying this because Heber's there. Same thing for Shannon Sims or Chase and the team. I'm just thoroughly blown away of their commitment and dedication to services for animal care. And it's not just the job. You can see the passion, you could see the hurt when things don't always go right or perfectly. But y'all have to know, and I think y'all already do. I've been hearing Sally say how amazing they've been for years, over a decade now. But I just wanted to let y'all know in my short 6 months as an assistant city manager, ACS is at the top of their game and they keep pivoting when they have to, and they learn very well and very quickly to adapt to the COVID-19. It's been uh, up and down because we've lost some loved ones out of the city as an organization. I think a total of 4 employees have passed away since the beginning of COVID. So none of this is to ever be taken lightly, but ACS, you have to be extremely proud. They continue to march on and they continue to be so respectful. The community engagement still exists. It has protocols that circle around it, but just wanted to say why everyone was on the call, Heber. I'm totally impressed, and my hat's off to all of you for supporting ACS and being a part of the journey, which it is, and it's never easy. But I appreciate all of you on the advisory board's passion and commitment, and I hope to see everyone's loved ones walking behind them or rubbing their tail on their ear or something before it's over. Thank you, Chase, for letting me speak.
Absolutely. I do see another one. Val, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chase. I just want to give a shout out to Shannon. He just got back to me. Those of you who've heard, one of the constituents in District 7 wanted to follow up on a horrible incident that happened a year or so plus ago about a guy who murdered a puppy in a pretty brutal fashion, and it was videotaped. Shannon just let me know that because ACS was keeping abreast of the case and keeping in touch with the DA's office, that the DA's accepted the case and the grand jury completed the indictment. So this guy's going to get hammered and deserves it. So thank you very much to Shannon and for ACS for sticking with the enforcing the animal cruelty, which unfortunately is so prevalent. Maybe this will send the needed message to those who try to think that this is okay. And it will also be good news for those that were following the case. So I'll go ahead and let them know. And thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay. I didn't see any more hands. One last chance. Okay.
So I get a mute for the rest of the meeting.
What's that?
So I get a mute for the rest of the meeting.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, no, you don't, Heber. All right. Well,
Right.
Heber, thank you for the briefing. And also, thank you so much, Heber, to you and to your staff for everything that you have done for the animals and for the community during this time. Since there's no further discussion, we'll move on to the next item. And that is item number 5. And it's a briefing on ACS's continued response to COVID-19. And Chase, I turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Rita. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Just want to confirm that everyone can see that. All right, great. I'm working with multiple screens, so I apologize. I won't be looking at the camera for this presentation. Have to keep my eyes on the prize here. So, talked to the executive committee before today's ACS advisory board meeting, and they requested an update on ACS's response to COVID-19, predominantly focused on answering 3 questions. Number 1, what changes have been made at ACS since the last time we presented an update to the board at the last board meeting? Number 2, what changes that we've implemented are we considering sticking with long term? And there's a third one. Oh, stats. Sorry. Whew, man, don't set myself up like that. What statistical impact we've seen on our performance measures since the COVID response, and how have our metrics been performing compared to what we would have expected to see during that time period. So I will walk you through all 3 of those changes now that I remembered what it was I was going to address. So to start with, I do want to go over the previously implemented changes. I do recognize that not all of the board members were able to attend the last board meeting. So I will go through these briefly, but at the end of the presentation, if you have questions about any one of these, again, Cynthia Martinez is also on the call. She'll be giving the next presentation as our Chief Operations Officer. She's got a lot of details about these changes as well. The first and perhaps most visible change that we made during COVID-19 was moving most all of our services to an appointment-based system. So for the most part, our campus is no longer open to walk-ins. We do allow walk-ins on a very limited basis if we would have had a slot there, but that it did not get filled. And that is predominantly for COVID-19 safety measures. We need to control the number of individuals on campus at any given point in time. The second is controlled traffic flow on campus. This does go hand in hand with the appointment-based system. But if you visit our campus, you'll see a number of traffic barriers that we've set up, kind of like going to the movie theater. Those ropes that hang. We've got signage, and instead of just kind of going in and out of whatever doors in the kennel you wanted, now we've got designated entry and exit points. We did limit the number of volunteers on campus. We still don't have much of a volunteer presence on campus itself, although we are working to expand that safely. We have improved our over-the-counter intake process, and I'll go into this a little bit more later. But the gist of it is, if there were opportunities for individuals who would have come to ACS with an animal, either to surrender that they found roaming the streets, we are now trying what we can to provide those individuals with resources to keep those animals in their care while we either seek placement, try and find the owner, do whatever we can to keep the animal off of our campus if possible. But we still do have over-the-counter intake. And if we cannot find alternatives, then through the appointment-based system or by calling 311 and just going out to collect the animal ourselves, that process is still going on. Most of you are aware at this point that we did at one point in time, really right around end of March, beginning of April, stop our on-campus surgeries, but to comply with our legal requirement to ensure that any animal we release is spay or neutered. We provided adopters and our rescue partners with spay-neuter vouchers that they have been able to redeem at our partner facilities, and I'll go into that one a little bit as well because we've seen some movement on this front. We did pause the community cat program. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We significantly increased our foster capacity. I'll show a graph later about what has happened with our foster program during COVID-19. Really, I think an impressive effort from the live release team to recruit more fosters. On campus itself, we are doing curbside pickup for all animals. So individuals who are here to, in rare cases at this point, drop off an animal for over-the-counter intake, or more common, pick up an animal from ACS for the foster program or for an adoption. That is all done curbside at this point. Home quarantine for rabies exposure cases. So this was another effort to try and prevent, if possible, animals coming onto our campus. This is both for the health and safety of the humans as well as the animals involved. And we did work with the state of Texas to get a temporary exemption from having to physically bring those animals onto our campus. We're conducting that process through video meetings with our veterinarians, and was previously implemented procedure, and then a number of other disease prevention measures. So I do want to go into, though, the changes that we have made since then. So since the last board meeting, there are 5 changes that I'd like to cover. The first is being our hours of operation. We did change those. I want to talk a little bit about the intake center that we've established, the restart and expansion of the spay and neuter surgeries that ACS is offering, the fact that we have resumed court hearings. So the court process is now getting back up to speed, and the creation of dedicated isolation areas on the ACS campus. So I'm going to go into each one of these in detail. So starting with the hours of operation, this was a change that was discussed at the last board meeting. We have implemented it since then. In a nutshell, during the week, we are now opening to the public 2 hours later than we were previously. So we were previously open 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. during the week. That is now shifted to 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. The main reason for this was not necessarily because of COVID, but was more of a customer service driven change. on campus. A lot of our service delivery earlier in the day when we were open in that 11 to 1 time frame typically was not a very active time for a lot of our adoption transactions, but was an active time for a lot of our other services. So while we are not technically open to the public from 11 to 1, we are scheduling appointments. So not for adoptions. That gives our shelter staff still time with the kennels closed to complete their cleaning protocols to get what they need to get done. But does allow us to conduct some of those other business transactions while we're still technically closed from 11 to 1. What it does do, though, for our shelter staff is allow us to get from a 2-shift system to a 1-shift system, which actually allows for more staff to be present in the kennels, in the kennel buildings at the same time. We are able to do that safely in light of COVID. We certainly didn't want to cause a new problem there. We still have a very limited number of people in the kennels. But the fact that there are more staff members there does allow our staff to have more conversations with visitors and play a more active role in selling animals and getting families, better understanding and more excited about the animals that we do have available for placement. Moving forward, we are not planning any major changes. So far, we're happy with the results of this schedule change, although we will monitor social media, email, whatever the case may be, feedback to see if any concerns are raised about this hour change moving forward. I want to talk a little bit about the intake center. So this is certainly not a public-facing change. This is entirely back of the house operations. But what we've done here is essentially taken a number of intake processes, anything from making sure that the animal got the vaccines that were needed, to doing a really thorough check for microchips, taking a high quality picture that's been a persistent conversation, conduct a heartworm test, just you name it, anything that was involved in officially impounding an animal into our system at ACS. Those processes all previously took place in a number of different locations. So field did a few out in the field before they would bring the animal to campus. The clinic conducted a lot of these processes within the clinic building. The shelter and live release team did a few of these processes within their areas. And after some planning, we implemented a centralized location for all of these processes to take place by a dedicated team who is thoroughly trained and just does nothing but this all day long. That way they get it done at a high level and without any possibility for missing any of these steps along the way. So one of the things that we did talk about last time was the fact that our adoptions team was moved to the annex building in order to give them more space to spread out in light of COVID. So we actually took advantage of their old space that opened up in the back of Building 4 to create this intake center. And so far, it seems to be working very well. The team has actually been taking a log of the number of microchips that they've found and the number of pictures they've improved upon compared to what would have been done without the intake center. And we're really pleased with the results. So we're still early in this effort, but we really believe in this central intake point that we have built and are looking forward to continuing to reap the benefits of that approach moving forward. Expansion of spay-neuter surgeries. I know this is a hot topic and a point of concern for a number of individuals in the community, and frankly, it's been a point of concern for us as well. We feel like we're in a pretty good spot with our spay-neuter surgeries because of the voucher program. So a couple numbers I'd like to share here is that 2,200 surgeries that normally would have happened at ACS from the March to July time period didn't, because we were closed. Our surgery operation was shut down, and instead those animals left with a voucher. The great news is that of those 2,200, 1,000, over 1,000 vouchers have already been redeemed, and those surgeries have been completed through our partner facilities, while an additional 50 have been redeemed at ACS. So 50 doesn't sound like a lot, but we just got started with this last week. Our live release team is placing calls and scheduling appointments with voucher recipients. We do realize that some of our partners out in the community that provide these services are still either temporarily shut down due to COVID, or are actively working on getting their numbers back up to where they were before COVID. So ACS, we definitely want to do our part to help work through some of this voucher backlog as well. The great news is that so far in the month of August, we have not issued a single new voucher. So this entire month, we are not adding to that 2,200 number. We are doing all of the surgeries that we would have normally done. And in fact, now we're starting to get through that backlog. So I think the trajectory of our spay-neuter surgeries at this point is definitely moving in the right direction. Currently, we are operating with surgeries 4 days per week, which is less than our normal 6. But we are working with our contract veterinarians as well as just planning internally with staff to try and increase that back to normal levels. And it's going to be something that we're going to continue to work on over the next few months. One final note there I did want to mention is the CCP program. Heber did share that we are planning on bringing this back in very limited quantities. I will defer to Cynthia on the exact plans on that if anyone does have any questions. But at this point, CCP, and the reason why that program has taken so long to get back is the spay-neuter surgeries that occur with all animals at the ACS campus do involve staff members in very close proximity to each other. And that's been a challenge in light of COVID that we've had to overcome. The community cat program really does introduce a new element to that equation, because now we have additional handoffs between cat trappers and staff, and then staff back to cat trappers. So we do want to get it going, but at the same time, we do want to make sure that we're doing that in a safe and responsible manner. So resume court hearings. Most court hearings on any topic, not just with ACS, were postponed for quite some time. In light of COVID, only the highest priority cases were still being heard, and those were being done remotely. While ACS did have some ability to move cases through the court system, for the most part, we were on pause. We were on hiatus for the last few months. Beginning in June 1st, though, we, along with the courts, launched a new, mostly virtual or entirely virtual remote process for moving conducting these hearings and moving these cases through the system. One of the things that ACS has done, though, on our end to help get through this backlog, and quite frankly, to keep our focus on what it is we're trying to achieve through the court system, which is compliance. Our field officer, who's responsible for working with courts, that officer has been thoroughly engaged in working through our court docket of hearings that are upcoming, and working with all of the individuals on the docket ahead of time before the hearing to see if we can bring those individuals into compliance. What we found is that a lot of these individuals already have gotten themselves into compliance. With others, we've found that if we can steer them in the right direction, if we can have some conversations, then we're successful in bringing them into compliance in which case we file a motion on our end to dismiss the charges. At this point, we've still got such a substantial backlog of cases in the court system that we do feel as though it's in the residents' and ACS's best interest to make sure that the court time we have is reserved for those cases that it is not in our best interest to dismiss, that we do want to continue to take those individuals to court. So this is an opportunity to work with individuals and achieve compliance. Sorry, somebody just came in. So a long term on this, our plan is to continue to push for compliance over court hearings. We're going to have to strike that balance between the two. Want to talk about dedicated isolation areas. So we've shared previously that ACS staff were working with the University of Wisconsin on a number of initiatives to decrease disease transmission here on campus. And one of the opportunities that came across was to create a dedicated isolation space. So to do that, ACS has established 8 kennels in the back of Building 3 and 11 in the main area of Building 3 for dedicated isolation. The important thing to note there is that these animals still are available for viewing. They still are available for members of the public to engage with them, to adopt, to foster. But this has allowed us to cut down on potential disease transmission across our population. So the permanent changes that we are planning on sticking with after COVID, number one is a hybrid of our appointment and walk-in systems. So at some point in the future, post-COVID, we would like to open our campus back up to walk-ins for adoptions. But for most other services, we would like to keep that on an appointment-based system to just help control the flow of traffic and then make sure that we get to individuals in a timely manner. The annex building is currently set up as our entry point onto campus, as our welcome center, with a dedicated ACS staff members able to answer questions and point individuals in the right direction. That's something that we want to stick with long term. I talked a little bit about the improved over-the-counter intake process, offering diversion opportunities, doing what we can to prevent, if we can, animals from coming onto the ACS campus. We're going to plan on sticking with that long term. Same thing with curbside pickup of pets. Once COVID is no longer a concern, disease transmission among pets always is. So this is an opportunity to cut down on animal traffic on campus. We are going to plan on proposing keeping the ability to do home quarantine for rabies observation. Currently, that's not something that state law allows for. Again, we're operating right now on a limited exemption from the state, but we would like to work with the state legislature, if possible, to propose modifying those restrictions in the future. And then finally, our hours of operation. We are planning on keeping that where we are right now, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. during the week. So I want to go through these quickly, and the board members have been sent these presentations. So if you want to go into it in further detail, you have that available. But I do want to show a number of our performance measures that have been impacted because of COVID-19. On all of these, what you will see in blue is actual performance that has occurred in the time period of October to July. And then starting in March, when our response to COVID-19 really began in earnest, you'll see a orange line up here. So this is the difference between the number of calls for service that we would typically answer and the number of calls for service that have really come in. It's definitely been suppressed during this time period. Total intake, what we've seen here is just a slow and gradual decrease in our total intake compared to what we would have normally seen over the summer months, which is typically the busiest time of the year for us, an increase. On spay-neuter surgeries, we did see April has, by far the lowest number of surgeries that we have seen at ACS in quite some time. But the good news is we did quickly start to rebound, and I do anticipate that August, we certainly won't be back to normal, but August will continue this trend line. A few live release measures adoptions have been down compared to expectations, but given the fewer number of animals moving through our system, I feel like we've done quite well here. Rescues, similar trend. But our foster program, this highlights, I believe, the efforts of the live release team, specifically in March and April, where we had a very high number of animals go through the foster system compared to what we would have expected normally. Return to owners has actually been fairly close to what we would have expected under normal times, which is positive. And then our live release rate, which has actually been very positive still. So March, that first month of the pandemic, was ever so slightly lower than what we would have expected. But ever since then, our live release rate has been substantially higher than what it would have been historically. And with that, that does conclude my presentation on our COVID-19 update. So Rita, would you like to handle this similar to how we handled it last time?
Yes, because you have a better view of all the members that I do. So we'll now go on to recognize members that want to discuss any of these items with you, Chase. Thanks.
All right. I think I saw Karen first. Karen.
Chase, I guess when I was talking about the diversion program, I'm on a lot of groups with lost and found pets, and a lot of people that find pets, I have been telling them, because they want to turn them into ACS, and I'm suggesting that they contact y'all and keep them under the diversion program. These are not the ones I'm talking about, are not owner surrenders. These are people that are finding animals, and instead of turning into ACS, I'm telling them to contact you and foster them under the diversion program. Is that correct that I'm doing that, or?
Cynthia or Heber, do you want to take that?
Absolutely. So when we looked at COVID, and again, I'm mentioning that COVID was an opportunity in regards to this. We've struggled very difficult with trying to manage over the years of how do you separate a owner surrender from that of a true stray, a good Samaritan bringing in a stray. Our recommendation and the direction that we're heading is, if you find a dog on the side of the street and you don't know what to do with it, call 311. If you call 311, they will direct us to an officer who then can work with you on the next steps. One of those options can be for them to hang on to it and to go through our diversion program, and we will be there to kind of coordinate the impoundment on the books, even though the dog stays in their house. So call 311, or if you send an email to intake, to ACS intake can also help if you're wanting to keep that or hold on to and foster that dog.
I guess my concern, Heber, is that a lot of these dogs sometimes have microchips that people have gone and gotten them scanned, but then the owners either didn't register the microchip, or they're trying to hold on to the dog because there's one lady that tries to hunt down the microchips and find out who they belong to and contact the owners. So sometimes these individuals are having to hold on to these animals for a few days till the owner is contacted. So
are you referring to individuals who do not have the ability to hold on to them for a few days, or are you talking about individuals who can hold on to them for a few days?
some of these people can hold on to them for a few days, because they want to find the owners. They don't want to keep the dog. They want to find the owners. So I'm telling them that if they could hold on to them and go through the diversion program, that it would, benefit ACS not having to have the dogs in there.
So the diversion program, absolutely. The diversion program will assist us. If we can divert for a couple of days, but not the whole time, that will still help us. But the diversion program is not a mandated program. It is a program that's offered for those residents or those individuals who are wanting to assist us in temporarily holding the dog while we go through the process to either identify the owner or to be able to find a placement for that. And so if the counsel that I would give, if you have an individual who found a dog and saying, hey, I'd like to participate, I can hang on to it for a couple of days, then yeah, that's where contact us either through 311 and let them know, or send an email with all the information about the dog that they have to ACS intake at sanantonio.gov. One of those two things, because we can then coordinate. If they can only hold on to it for a couple of days, our intake staff will coordinate with them on when they can bring it in onto the shelter. If we are talking about an individual who does not have the capability, they find a dog and they don't have the capability of house, our instruction on a recommendation is call 311, because then we can send an officer to go in there and pull the dog and bring it to our shelter. But in all cases, we're not asking them to do all the work. If they're saying, hey, I can hold on to it for 3 days, get in contact with our intake staff. We will register it in the system. If they've already identified the microchip number, we can use our resources to try to track that down. You're correct. If there's a microchip that is not registered, we may not have that individual, but we will know who bought the microchip or who purchased the microchip, like what company, and we can call them. And oftentimes those organizations will have a record as for who they sold the microchip to. So there's other avenues. It's based upon what the resident or the Good Samaritan is able and willing to do. We will use their help.
I guess too, what I'm saying, Heber, because sometimes I see individuals that say, hey, I, can't hold on to this dog and I've contacted ACS and they can't pick them up and I'm just going to rehome it. And, I've had a couple of those and I told them, I said, if this was your pet, you would not want someone doing that to you. I said, if you can't, I said, just call 311, tell them that you have the dog contained and you cannot keep it. And they should send somebody out there to pick it up.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to help by not sending dogs, because I know most of the people that find these dogs, they'll say, I can hold on to them till the owner is found. And that's when I tell them, well, contact ACS and tell them you want to foster under the diversion program. And that way they can market the animal and hopefully find its owner, because the first place the owner is going to look is ACS.
Yes, and keep in mind that it is important for them to contact us in one way or another, because we have the only legal right, the only legal process to take a stray dog and convert the ownership to somebody else. So if you have a Good Samaritan who is picking a dog on the street and then finding placement for that dog, it is rare, but it could create legal issues down the road for both them and for the potential adopter. And so, yeah, we need to play a role in that, whether that be through our diversion program or through them calling 311. Those are two options that are available based upon the residents' willingness to participate and resources that are available. We should not be, ACS should not be telling somebody who cannot keep a dog, saying you have to keep the dog. If you are getting those reports, then I want to hear about them. Now that is a statement that I have heard on frequently, and every time that I've investigated, I found out that they have not contacted ACS. They are referencing previous calls of previous services, or they are referring to assumptions that other people have made through social media or through about what ACS will do or will not do. And on occasion, we are getting sometimes representatives on 311 who may try to be extra try to helpful, giving us some false information. But if that's happening, let me know and we can research that. But in the end of the day, we should not be telling people that we cannot pick up a stray dog that is confound in the house.
Most of the people on this site, on these couple of sites that I'm on, there's several of them that really do go the extra mile in trying to track down the microchip and offering, you know, if you can't hold on to the dog, then I can hold on to the dog and contact ACS. So they're trying to, we're trying to, I don't want to say keep them out of ACS, but telling them to go through y'all, you know, market them, because everybody on there says you need to let ACS know because they will market the dog and you can keep it till the owner's found. And if you can't, then, you know, they can pick up the dog. So that's what we're trying to do to help alleviate the stress there at ACS.
Yeah, and I know that particularly San Antonio, you know, we focus a lot of the bad behavior that sometimes happens in San Antonio, but we also need to give credit where credit is due to the many good San Antonians who they are making my job so much easier. And as much as I would love to say, hey, you don't have to do those type of things, we need their help. And so those good Samaritans who are finding placement for the pets without those dogs having to step foot onto ACS campus, that is an essential service that needs to continue. That is a volunteer work that needs to happen. Otherwise, we will not be able to maintain the level of services that we are currently maintaining. But in the end of the day, if they're able to help, we want to be there to help facilitate that and to help them. If they can't help, then that's where we can step in and provide assistance.
Thank you, Heber.
All right, George. George, you're on mute.
Yes, Heber, I have a question for you. In the District 3 stats, there was 28 bite cases.
Okay.
Okay, were those animals taken to ACS or were they left with the owners for the quarantine period for the rabies?
So if I can look at what those 20, I can give you a breakdown. More than likely, a large percentage of them were probably quarantined in their home, or a small percentage of them were quarantined at ACS. Now, keep in mind, let's remember what the definition of a bite is, or bite or scratch. A bite or scratch is any behavior that caused a scratch or caused the bleeding of the human. So if you have a puppy and you're playing with the puppy, and the puppy who has sharp teeth just scratches you, that can be included in that count of 35. Likewise, if you have somebody walking down the street and a neighborhood dog jumps the fence and attacks, that is also in that same category. So that category of bites or scratches extend on, it has a wide range of what could have caused that bite or scratch. Our policy right now during COVID is if it is a bite or scratch that does not cause harm, that did not cause significant harm, and where there's not going to be any type of potential case of dangerous dog or dangerous or SBI cases, we're going to go for the home quarantine because that's where the bulk of them are coming from. These are dogs that may not have been update on its rabies vaccination that bit its owner in the house. This may be a dog that, while out walking around stray, somebody pulled its tail and the dog flipped around and nibbled at it and caused a scratch. Those, they'll be quarantined at home because we're not quarantining them because they're dangerous. We're quarantining them to monitor them for the for the possibility of rabies exposure. I will tell you, George, if there's ever any type of a case where there's a bite that has occurred, where there is the nature of that bite puts at risk, where our officers are saying, hey, that is a risky behavior and a safety issue, those pets can only be quarantined at ACS. And our officers will bring them in, quarantine them, while we go through the process of determining whether or not a dangerous dog designation can be held or not. So as for the specific of the 39, without being able to know what those cases are, I can't break them out, but I'll tell you that if it's anything like all the other ones, most of them are probably home quarantined right now during COVID, with the exception of those that demonstrate any potential dangerous behavior.
Do we give them specific instructions when we quarantine them at home?
Absolutely. So
And do the ACS officers follow up?
yes. So the ACS follows up, the doctor follows up. Dr. Gottbetter, I think if you're still on here, maybe you can provide a little bit of clarification, but for the quarantine for rabies, the dog has to be inspected by the veterinarian at the beginning of the quarantine period, and then it has to be inspected by a veterinarian at the end of the quarantine period. Now, the process that we set up in tied to COVID is we are working with the pet owners where they are providing us a video of the dog for a minute or so with the instructions on what they need to show. They need to show the dog breathing. They need to show the dog standing up and walking around, providing a video of the dog at the beginning and then also of the dog at the end, so that the doctor can do its medical evaluation of the dog pre-quarantine as well as post-quarantine. And so all of those things are happening. Our officers are also providing the instructions of reminding them that the dog cannot be let out, that it needs to be quarantined inside the home or inside of a fenced area.
Yes, Hubert, that is correct. They get an intake exam and they also get an exit exam. It's no less than a minute of certain aspects of the animal. We need to see full facial features and then also the animal being walked. And then, of course, no contact with any other family members.
And George, let me tell you that Dr. Gottbetter and her amazing staff, they are not afraid of telling the assigned officer, I need another video.
Very good.
All right, next question. Rita.
I had a question on the vouchers. When the either the adopter or the rescue group received a voucher, was there a certain period of time that they had before they, to comply?
Yeah, so there was on the voucher. What we did is we wrote if I'm not mistaken, we wrote the date of issuance and said that it had to be completed within 60 days. We did that really at that point, not knowing what the landscape for spay-neuter surgeries moving forward was going to be.
Okay.
Now that for the vast majority of those vouchers, 60 days has elapsed, that's where the phone calls from ACS staff to the voucher recipients have come in. And the purpose of those phone calls is to let individuals know they have more time if they've not conducted it already. We understand that there are limited options out there available in the community. Number two, to schedule an appointment to come to ACS and do the surgery if they don't already have an appointment set up. And number three, we have had a number of instances where The individual decided not to use the voucher and got the animal spay or neutered at a private clinic and is able to provide us with those results.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question. Val?
Thank you. Yeah, I have two things here. One real quick, the spay neuter hours. I'm bringing a dog apparently in tomorrow morning for neuter, and SAPA said to be there at 9. Usually you guys were at 7:30. So have you lowered your hours just like you did for the visitation to come in and look? So the hours for the surgery is less as well. You start at 9 rather than, we used to have to drop them off, I believe, at 7:30.
So we haven't lessened necessarily the amount of time that we'll spend in surgery, but we have driven back the drop-off time just to make it easier for people to be able to bring the animals to us. And so we push our drop-off time between 8:30 and 9 o'clock.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Cynthia. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
And another real quick is I don't know if ACS is direct partner, but SAPA is partnering with and send a lot of their animals to pet shots during this whole COVID crisis because they're one of the clinics that remained open. I have been besieged with complaints from people that were taking animals in to be spay or neutered at pet shots, particularly because it has been so gosh darn hot this summer, like many times over 100 degrees. And there were elderly people outside. They had to wait for an hour and a half to sometimes 3 hours just to get their animal dropped off for spay or neuter. And then the same thing when they came back. And when they tried to, try to talk to the staff there about alternate arrangements, particularly the elderly people, because there was no place to drink or anything like that. And it's very crowded, limited places to park. People became very frustrated, and there were several that just got in their cars and went home and didn't get the spay or neuter done. And some of them even went to their private veterinarian and paid out of pocket because of the frustrations of the bureaucracy. And the 100% of the complaints were the inability of the staff to come up with an efficient operation. They didn't want to hear any suggestions, and they were extraordinarily rude to a lot of the people that were there to drop their animals off for spay and neuter. And so I'm just forwarding this on to you guys because I know that they're a partner with the city. They're not complaining about the doctor or the spay or neuters. They're complaining about the process by which they were treated, and in the dramatic temperatures, no one should have to wait outside for 3 hours to get their animal fixed.
Yeah, I will tell you that I've received more than normal or an increase in complaints as well, addressing some of the same issues. I've had some conversations with pet shots. Now, on the one hand, I get it, and I completely agree. On the other hand, where most organizations shut down, regrouped, waited, and then started back up, pet shots stayed open. And so you had basically one place where people were able to go to be able to get the surgeries. So I understand where you're coming from, and I've been communicating with pet shots. So there's a component that I agree that there's a component that they need to kind of like make some tweaks and make some adjustments. And while we can't force them to do so, my experience has demonstrated that customers will go where they are most comfortable going. And over time, as long as we can get more spay and neuter providers out there, that fixes itself. That being said, I agree that there was opportunities in the last couple of months that could have been done that did not do. And so I'll keep working with them.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's not that they, I'm very happy that they continued their spay and neuter surgery, considering COVID. However, I was particularly concerned about the elderly people in that kind of heat, and there seemed to be little or no concern from the staff. And the fact that they were so rude, there's no cost for that. There could have been a million different ways that it was handled. But like you said, I don't know what control, if any, that you have over them to try to make their operations, at least the administration part of it, more efficient. But it was a big frustration for a lot of people.
Yeah, contractually, they are a separate business. Contractually, I do not have the ability to require them to make changes. So I don't have the ability to force them to implement a new process, even if it would help them. But we are a good partner to where we do have influence with them. And so I'll keep on using that influence.
All right, Cindy.
Thanks, Chase. I would just echo some of the comments that Val said. In a couple of instances, that was me standing out for 3 hours in 98-degree heat with 90% humidity, and I wasn't worried about me. It was the older individuals. I will say that the behavior is not a lot different than what I previously experienced, sadly. So, and I understand what you say, Heber, and appreciate. I mean, it would be great if people had a chance to make inputs, at least express their frustration, because there was a lot of it. But so I did want to recognize, though, many of the other. I recognize, as you said, that they were open when others were not able to be, and that was important. I would like to also recognize some of the other rescue partners or spay-neuter providers that have ramped up and are doing a really nice job and doing a great job of the curbside service. I mean, I actually kind of prefer it. I mean, it's so nice. You sit in your car and you wait instead of standing out in line. It's actually really nice. You got the AC going. You're not worried about your dog trying to go and bark at somebody else. So kudos to these providers who have stepped up and are trying to pick up the slack. I do know they're a little frustrated. I know there were some appointments that were opened up for one of the providers, and they were gone in 6 minutes after the window opened up to schedule for the next month. And so that shows that demand is really high. So I'm very glad and appreciative to your staff that they're ramping back up so quickly to start addressing these dogs that were adopted without being able to be spayed or neutered because they just didn't have that opportunity. So thank you for that. I think that was the main thing. If there, I don't guess that there are any funds to recapture or any way to plus up spays and neuters going forward because of the operations of the spays and neuters that they didn't do during this period, is there?
So we're working on that. So
okay.
If I've got providers, we will do all that we can to spend as much money on spay and neuter as we possibly can.
I know you have done that previously, and I appreciate that because obviously this is an area, even though our city provides, has a real high number. It's an area, I think it's like the appetite is insatiable. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think I've been to the campus and I like the setup. I like the things that you guys have implemented, and I appreciate y'all taking this opportunity to really look in that intake center, especially. I remember because I've been in some of those conversations, where, gosh, why can't we get a good picture? And now to have, and part of the reason was because it was being done by so many different areas. And now this is giving you an ability to have one group of people who's responsible for it. And I think that is a great change that you've made there.
I know
I think that was it. Thanks. Good briefing.
I know that the pictures has been something that both you and Val, we've talked a lot about. I will tell you that it's only been made possible for us to be able to do this by us making the changes on the over-the-counter intake. By us being able to make those
Right.
changes allowed us to be able to move staff around to redirect their attention to other things. So we're glad we're able to do it too, and hopefully it will continue.
Well, and I do appreciate the responsibilities sort of that you're putting back on people that are bringing, and I know you have made that a focus for a long time, trying to look for other options, and I appreciate that you've been your efforts have really produced a lot, even more success during this COVID period, because I think that's been one thing that, obviously it kind of tugs at you, and that you're able to have more dogs stay with their owners for longer, or their finder, I think is excellent. And I'm happy that that's something you're going to continue to implement. I think that's really important. I think it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Katie, did I see your hand earlier?
Thanks, and I'll be really quick. I was just wondering, in terms of some of those more permanent operational changes, how can we as a board help you all communicate that with constituents? Is there any kind of community one-pager that we might be able to share through our council member's office or within our community to let people in the community know about some of these more permanent changes?
We could create something. We don't have something right now. We could create something for you. Most of these changes are behind the scene changes. They're more of operational changes. And so from my perspective of customers, they just want to know, who do I call? But we can, for your information, we can create something.
Yeah, I thought Chase mentioned something about maybe going forward with like appointments and that sort of thing. And I feel like that's something that people in the community would want to know, that they need to make an appointment in advance.
Yeah. So in the end of the day, if somebody walks on our campus, we'll fit them in, and we may be able to serve them right then and there. But we've communicated with 311 of a call and schedule an appointment. We have it on our website. And if somebody calls us, we'll direct them. We'll kind of walk them through scheduling the appointment, but we can get you something.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, I think I saw Karen first.
Heber, the one question I have is, if they're going in for spay neuter, don't they have to set up an appointment for that? Because I know when I've taken mine in, you schedule an appointment and you have to have the dog there by a certain time. So why are these people out there standing in 100-degree heat if they have appointments? Or am I missing something?
You're not necessarily missing something. Part of that wait is associated with, you have an appointment to have the surgery, but you have all of the people with their animals showing up to drop off at about the same time. And so it's waiting for the staff to go through and process all the animals. I will tell you, operationally, there are solutions to be able to minimize that. And we'll continue to talk to them about those solutions, those operational decisions and operational solutions that they need to incorporate.
I guess my concern is, because when I've gone over there before, I mean, there's like 50 people packed in a waiting room, and in other places I've gone to for the same thing, spay and neuter, I've just, say, here I am. They, drop the dog off. They take the dog. You have the form to fill out before you go. And it's been, I've never had to wait at other places. I've never been to Pet Shots to have a spay neuter, but if that's a concern, just by the amount of people in there when I've been, maybe they need to look at something like, you send them the paperwork in advance. If they've scheduled an appointment and they need paperwork, they can just give them the paperwork in advance, email it to them and, or mail it to them and have them fill it out. And then that way they can just come and drop the dog off, especially with your elderly people.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I'll continue to work with them on that topic. I know that but COVID brings to light a lot of things. New processes or new experiences brings to light new issues. They're struggling through modifying what was previously socially acceptable as for how they operated. Now it's not, and they're going through the pains of making those adjustments. And some people are able to go through those pains quicker than others, but we're still work with them, and they are a valued partner. I can tell you that if they're not there, the city would suffer. But we'll continue to work with them, and the good news is that they are a good partner. That we do have some conversations where we bounce ideas back and forth, and they have incorporated some of the recommendations that we've made, and I'll continue to make those recommendations.
Thank you, Heber.
All right, Sally. Sally, I'll unmute you on my end. Give me just a second. Okay, go for it.
Okay. I'm with Katie. I need something in my hand that shows a lot of the changes to talk to my council member because he's already called and wants to know.
Will do. So I will get that to you. And when I say I will get that to you, what I'm really saying is Case will get it to me and I'll get it to you.
Okay.
All right, Martha. Martha, you're muted as well.
Hi, everyone. I apologize for my video going in and out. I have terrible allergies and I'm sneezing and coughing over here. I wanted to ask Chase, you could have any understanding of what declining numbers to, like the roaming animals, and specifically that.
Martha, I'm sorry. Can you repeat yourself? You're breaking up.
Yes. I'm curious about some of those statistics that you showed earlier.
Okay.
Specifically the roaming animals and what you all think is causing that decline.
So I didn't have any statistics on roaming animals. I did have calls for service and total intake. Is it one of those that you?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So for both of those, that's a really good question. Heber, if you want to weigh in on this as well. We've talked about this internally to try and figure out what has been driving that. And we really had two theories. One is that there are just as many roaming animals out there as there's ever been, but people just don't see them. And so they're not calling them in. And then the other theory was that individuals, because they're home, are being more responsible and are, not letting their pets roam. They're constantly surrounded by their animals. So they're taking better care of them, being more responsible. At the end of the day, we don't really have any way to know which of those two is the case. But with a reduction in calls for service, we have had more of our officers having time to be proactive, driving around, keeping their eyes open for animals, and just the I guess organic encounters that officers have with animals has not increased during this time. So, Heber, I don't know if you'd have anything to add to that.
No, I think that where we're at right now is there's nothing that we can have that gives us an definitive as for what is causing it. I do agree I am less prone to think that it is because we are seeing an actual decrease in animals, or roaming animals in the community. Instead, I'm more prone to believe that with all of the issues, that the social issues that the city and the community and the nation are facing right now, that the dog walking down the street is not as big of an issue as it used to be, or a big of a concern what it is, which tells me that we do need to be prepared for those numbers to return, and we still need to provide the proactive services.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, not seeing any. Rita, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thanks, Chase. I appreciate it. If there's no further discussion on this, we're going to move on to the next item, and it's item number 6 on the agenda, an update on K9 for Warriors San Antonio expansion. And that goes over to Cynthia Martinez.
Cynthia, I just made you presenter, so you should be able to share your screen when you can.
Okay, guys, give me just a second to get this up. Can everyone see?
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm just going to give you guys a quick update on our K9 for Warriors partnership. First, a little background history on K9s for Warriors. They are a nonprofit organization located near Jacksonville, Florida. They take dogs from city shelters and train them to be service animals for veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, or military sexual trauma. They've been in operation since 2013 and provide free services to all of their veterans. The dogs in the program go through a really rigorous 3 to 4 month training program, at the end of which selected veterans, sorry, you can tell I work in a shelter, selected veterans from across the nation are flown to Florida to spend 3 weeks in interactive training with their new service pets. On our partnership, background on our partnership, in January of 2019, the City Council approved a lease agreement which would allow K9s for Warriors to lease and build on the property next door to Animal Care Services. In May of 2019, they hired their first staff, and by August of 2019, we were transferring pets to Florida to enter into the more rigorous training program. In December of 2019, K9s had a groundbreaking for their construction. Unfortunately, of course, COVID came along and put a delay in all of their building plans. So today, ACS reserves 4 kennels for K9s to house transferred pets in Building 2. The pets are given an initial screening that can take 30 to 45 days before they're able to be transferred to Florida to start the 3 to 4 month training there. The screening includes behavior and temperament evaluation, a canine influenza vaccine, and then they have to wait 30 days for that vaccine to take effect. The pets are sterilized, and then they undergo orthopedic diagnostics for conditions such as hip dysplasia. To date, K9s has transferred 25 dogs into their program. 4 of those dogs are still here in San Antonio, undergoing the initial screening process. 4 have been matched with a veteran. 6 are still in the program in Florida waiting to meet their veterans, and 11 have found placement through K9's adoption program. Any animals that go to Florida but aren't able to make it through the service dog training program, K9s has an adoption program where they find homes for them. So with COVID-19, they did see a decrease in the number of veterans seeking assistance, but that has begun to reverse, and they're starting to see their numbers go back up. Their Texas State Director did leave the organization, but we were informed today that they have replaced that individual, so we should be meeting this person soon. And then, as I mentioned earlier, they did pause their building projects because of COVID-19, but have come back. And they've had 3 general contractor candidates, of which they will be selecting 1 for the building project by late August. So we expect by September, construction will begin on their new 30 kennel facility. In that kennel facility, there'll be 24 regular kennels and 6 isolation kennels, which is a great deal more than the 4 we've been able to provide. We had thought that they would have a director hired by September, but they've beaten that goal. And then hopefully the new facility will be completed in May of 2021. While all of this is going on, of course, K9s is going to continue to pull pets for us and transfer down to Florida. So this concludes our whirlwind update on canines. Does anybody have any questions?
Cynthia, is that big concrete pad that I see out there when I drive by, is that where they started construction on that? In the field right there where they were going to
So
start their building?
The food bank has got construction in their area. Are you talking about?
It's directly behind the area where we did the dedication for Canine for Warriors. There's a big, large cement pad. I mean, that's Canine for Warriors has started that, right?
Yes, ma'am. I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
So that is not just FYI, that is not a new pad. They have not done any construction as of yet. They did clear the property and they were expected to begin construction or start that process earlier back in March when COVID hit. They stopped, but they haven't done any construction yet. The concrete that is back there was there beforehand. It just became visible when we cut all the weeds.
I have a question. This is Martha. What kind of interaction, if any, this program have with the public, and also what kind of interaction will they have with us as an advisory board?
So with the public on site, their interaction is limited. With you as an advisory board, I think that their interaction level would be very much the same as any of our other partners. It would be happening through us, through ACS itself.
Yeah, because the nature of what their program is set up to do, working with veterans, they don't have their target audience is not necessarily the general San Antonio population so much as specifically trying to pair their animals with veterans.
So the model that they have is that they're creating a kennel where they can begin that 3-month training process for the dogs here at ACS or in San Antonio at their shelter. So their campus is going to have the kennels where the dogs are being housed and cared for, as well as a training ground for their staff to start the training process of the dogs. Eventually, those dogs will then be transported to Florida, where they will be paired with the warrior and undergo that aspect of it. It is not a facility that's going to be open to the general public. That being said, they are expecting to have an influence here in San Antonio because they are wanting to be able to, with San Antonio being Military City, USA, they want to be able to be here to be able to raise funds and interact with the community through the services. The facility is being built and is being designed that if this is successful, they can expand on it even more so that their facility, the facility in San Antonio or next door can be identical to what they're doing in Florida and actually be a place where the warriors are receiving the training.
Any other questions? Don't see any hands. One last chance. Okay, Rita, the floor. Oh, never mind. Val. Oh, Val, you're muted. You're muted. I cannot hear you. There you go.
All right. Since we have a lot of the the military to come here after they've been wounded and go to the hospitals here, is there any liaison between that and this new organization? We have a lot of veterans organizations here in San Antonio. So I didn't know if there's any active liaison going on, or is everything run through Florida?
Heber, you're muted now.
All right. I just want to be part of the team. So the Texas, they're going to have a Texas Texas director who a component this, they're looking at this, and the structure that they're building is not just the management. They are building a Texas presence. And the intent is that the director, the Texas director, will also be there to build those relationships with the military, to serve as a liaison and build those relationships with other military agencies. So yes, they plan on doing a lot more than just pulling and training dogs.
Okay, one last opportunity. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Rita, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Chase. And thanks, Cynthia, for that update on K9 for Warriors. Next on our agenda is public comment. And Chase, I'm going to throw this back to you because you received the email from the citizen who wanted to have public comment.
Yes. So thanks, Rita. This is public comment in the COVID-19 era. Rather than hearing from the individual or any individuals interested directly, we've adopted this email system in order to get their comment around. So we did receive tonight's comment from Mr. John Bachman. I'm going to read it verbatim. And as is past practice with the board typically does not respond directly to any public comment that's issued. So here I go. The third quarter report continues the pattern of trying to paint a pretty picture rather than reporting the truth and discussing it. Rather than bragging about the live release rate of 92.5%, they should explain that it is high because the impound numbers were down nearly 30% from the average. That meant 2,427 fewer animals were taken off the streets or from unwilling owners. Also, all of the actual live release numbers, adoptions, rescues, RTOs, TNR, and even fosters were down over 20%. They report the almost $50,000 raised in donations and matching funds, but say nothing of what exactly they're using it for in order to make up for the decrease in performance due to the COVID-19 crisis. They could perhaps have used it to pay for more spay-neuter surgeries to make up for the decrease, which was almost 60%. Actually, the replacing in-house spay and neuter surgeries with vouchers is questionable. The vouchers were essentially useless since there was no excess capacity available. The in-house surgeries would have continued to be performed by the same team, and they would not have had to interact with any public and minimal staff. This should perhaps have been considered an essential function. It was at least as critical as any of the other functions which continued. Doing surgeries for the smaller rescue partners could have increased their ability to take animals. All of their numbers are down considerably, while those of SAPA and ADL are at their limits. Since I am writing this without the ability to hear the presentations first, I hope that some of these issues were addressed by the director or brought up by Animal Care Services Advisory Board members. Animals matter, and I hope that will start being reflected in the budget and the policies of the city and ACS. That concludes Mr. Bachman's statement.
Thank you for reading that statement, Chase. The next thing on the agenda is the determination of our next meeting date. We are required to have elections before the beginning of each fiscal year, which is October 1st, which means that we need to have a meeting in September to do elections. Our thought, the executive committee, and I will take comments from people on this date, to move it to the end of September, which would be September 30th, since we're doing 2 months back to back. So it'd be September 30th at the same time, 6:30. And then I would open up to any on that date.
So does anybody either want to make a motion or have any comments or questions in response to Rita? George, I'm seeing a hand.
I make a motion that we accept that date for the next meeting.
Okay, I've got a motion from George.
A second on that motion. Second
Okay,
from Cindy.
second.
I second
Cindy, got it? Okay.
Yes.
All right, and then I will take a roll call. Give me just 1 second. Okay, here we go down the list. Michael Shannon,
Yes.
Cindy Cox,
Yes. Aye.
Martha Banda,
Yes.
George Garcia, George, I need to hear you. Sorry.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir. Rita Brodigam,
Yes.
Karen Spear, Karen, I'm sorry. Need to hear you.
Yes, sorry, I was clicking on the wrong one.
Kathy Davis, not with us. Val Moore,
Yes.
Katie Jarl,
Yes.
Susan Belden. Susan, I need to hear you. You're muted. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Gotcha. And Sally Scott.
Yes.
All right. The ayes have it. I believe 10. Yes, 10-0.
Okay, thank you, Chase. I have one other thing. Michael Shannon, he has he has agreed to provide an email to everyone on the board to see if they have any nominations for chair, vice chair, and secretary, and if they are interested in running themselves for any of these positions. So, Michael, are you up for it again another year?
Yes. You'll see an email shortly.
Okay, thanks, Mike. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so having heard all the items on the agenda, the time now is 8:38. So this is your opportunity to bring up, is there any other questions that people have for any of the presenters before we do a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Val Moore, motion to adjourn.
And could I have a second, please, on that?
Second, Cindy Cox.
Okay, great. And call on this? Chase, or do we?
Yep. Sorry, I just got to get my notes. Accepted. Okay. All right. We'll take a roll call one more time. Michael Shannon.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Cindy Cox.
Aye.
Martha Banda.
Yes.
George Garcia.
Yes.
Rita Brodigam.
Yes.
Karen Spear.
Yes.
Kathy Davis with us. Val Moore.
Yes.
Katie Jarl.
Yes.
Susan Belden.
Yes.
Sally Scott.
Yes.
And the ayes have it 10-0. We are adjourned.
Thank you. It was great to see you all staying healthy. Again in
Same here.
September.
Thank you, everybody.
Great presentation,
You
Cynthia.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody stay safe.
Thank you. Everybody take care. Stay healthy.
Take care.
Bye, Susan. Nice to see
Bye-bye.
you.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.